Okay guys, so today I'll be doing an introduction to K9. I'll be covering both how to play this archetype as its own deck and how to play this archetype as a splashable engine. If you are new to my channel, I tend to stay away from combos and spreadsheets as they are everywhere on YouTube and do not give you an understanding of how the game works. Instead, I try to focus on deck theory and game plan. What is the game plan? What are the fundamental mechanics or gimmicks that an archetype revolves around that make it good? So in this video, I will do 3 different things in a structured way. Firstly, a brief overview of just the most important cards in the archetype so that you can follow along with the rest of the video. Secondly, 2 illustrations of how to sequence your plays in order to get the most value out of your resource loop. And thirdly, I will give my thoughts on how this will translate into the TCG and whether you should even consider playing it as its own deck versus just as an engine. Okay, let's get started. And by the way, the overwhelming majority of my regular viewers, still close to 70%, are not subscribed to my channel. Guys, come on. Okay, so card overview. Firstly, let's start with Izuna, because this is going to be the most popular card in the entire K9 archetype, and the entire reason why people are even considering this as a splashable engine. So this card, like the other main deck cards, is a level 5. They're all level 5s, and they're all geared towards putting level 5s on board, so you can make rank 5s. So this card says, if your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand, you can normal summon this card without tributing. This is pretty standard for K9. You can only use each of the following effects of K9 Izuna once per turn. During the main phase, if your opponent activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, then as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, if it is normal or special summoned, you have a trigger effect where you can send a K9 card from your deck to the graveyard except itself. Now the reason this is played in a package is because if your opponent turns this on by, during the main phase, having activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, not only can you quick effect special summon this card and dump something else, but if you dump Lupus, which is another level 5, this says during the main phase, if your opponent activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. During your opponent's turn, you can quick effect immediately after this effect resolves XYZ summon using this card you control, and this is once per turn. Any XYZ monster that has this card as material gains this effect. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. So even if you don't play any other K9 cards, and you just have triple Izuna and 1 Lupus, it means you can go into a rank 5 play on your opponent's turn. Now, all of these cards are facilitating making rank 5s in some way. So for example, Case of K9, which is a continuous spell card, says when this card is activated, you can add a K9 monster from your deck to your hand, such as Izuna. If you're just playing the package, you're obviously not going to also be playing Searchers because you need to fit space for your main engine and all of your non-engine. But if you were playing K9, there's really no reason not to play this card because it searches your highest quality cards. K9 monsters you control gain 900 attack the turn your opponent activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard. So this is like one of the basic gimmicks. Your opponent has to have activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard in order for them to do something. If this card in the spell and trap zone is destroyed by card effect, you can set 1 K9 quick play spell from your deck or graveyard. This is a pretty important effect, and you will see that there are other types of effects that allow you to reset K9 cards to continue getting value as the game continues. And these are once per turn effects, and you can only use 1 of these effects per turn. Then we have Droll, which is probably the other good K9 card that you will in some cases see if other engines are choosing to play this as a splashable package. In many cases, they just want to play Izuna as the pure hand trap, but sometimes if other decks also have level 5s, then the Droll is usually going to be live because this says if your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand, you can normal summon this card without tributing, just like the other one. You can only use each of the following effects of Droll once per turn. You can reveal this card and 1 other level 5 monster in your hand, so this does not have to be a K9 card you reveal. It can also be a Vanquish Soul, Holly Sue, or any other level 5 in the game. Special summon both, but they cannot be used as material for the XYZ summon of a light monster. This is one of the most important locks in the entire deck, because the gimmick card Paradise Smasher is a light XYZ monster, and this card is basically like the Shockmaster of K9, and this says once per turn during your main phase 1, you can detach 2 materials from this card. Each player rolls a 6-sided die twice. The player with the higher total cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack until the end of the next turn. And then once per turn, if either player rolls a 6-sided die or dice, while this card has material, you can treat one of the results as 7. I don't remember the exact stats on this, but basically almost every single time, you're going to roll in such a way that you are locking your opponent out of activating monster effects or attacking. So being able to make a level 5, an attribute light rank 5 XYZ monster with 3 materials means that you are probably going to turn skip your opponent, and that's why Droll has an effect that means that you can't use it, and the thing it brings back is material for a light rank 5. Well, there are also other good light rank 5s, but this is the main one that people are currently abusing. Okay, so then for the last of the main deck, we have Lantern, which has the same thing where if your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand, you can normal summon it without tributing, and then the following effects are once per turn. So if this card is in your hand, you can target a non-pyro, so this one's a pyro, a non-pyro level 5 canine monster in your graveyard. So this one actually does have to target a canine, whereas, the Jokul just has to have a level 5. You special summon both this card from your hand and then the canine from your graveyard, but it cannot be used as material for the XYZ summon of a light monster. So Lantern and Jokul lock you out of lights for your rank 5 plays. So yeah, then during your main phase, you can add a canine spell or trap from your deck to your hand. So this one adds a canine spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And then this one, where is it? During your main phase, you can add a non-aqua canine monster from your deck to your hand. So they're all like searchers, and then they get other bodies onto the field. We have another searcher here, which is Chaotic Elements, which most decks kind of have to play because you're running out of high-quality engine cards if you don't play it. So this one adds a level 5 or higher light or dark pyro or aqua monster from your deck to your hand. So this is a light or dark pyro, and this one is a light or dark aqua. So yeah, these add a level 5 or higher light or dark pyro aqua. And then if you have 3 or more pyro and or aqua monsters in your graveyard, you can destroy 1 card on the field, which is non-targeting. If your opponent controls a light or dark pyro or aqua monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 monster your opponent controls, take control of it until the end phase. So this is like a pretty strong, very solid searcher for the deck. Finally, there are some other level 5s that people are choosing to play in this deck that are not actually good cards, but because there aren't enough good level 5s, you do have to play other rank level 5 bodies to get on field to go into your rank 5 plays. So the most common one is Disablaster, the Negation Fortress. So this is a pendulum card. The pendulum effect is negate any card effects activated in this card's column. So you could have some niche use for that. But the monster effect is, if there is a column with no cards, you can special summon this card from your hand to your zone in that column. You can only special summon this card once per turn this way. Negate any card effects activated in this card's column. If this card in your monster zone is destroyed, you can place it in your pendulum zone. Basically, this is just a level 5 body, and that's it. There's also another level 5 body some people are playing, which is Trickstar Corobane. So this one says, if you control no monsters, or all monsters you control are Trickstar monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So it's basically like Cyber Dragon. This has another effect that's not really relevant, but some people are playing this card and they're also playing Trickstar Light Stage. So when this card is activated, you can add a Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand, but then it has another effect that says once per turn you can target a set card in your opponent's spell and trap zone. While this card is in the field zone, that set card cannot be activated until the end phase, and your opponent must activate it during the end phase or else send it to the graveyard. So this is like a pretty cheesy type of card, and it's why you might want to draw this instead of just the level 5 directly, because this gives you another type of interaction. But this plays worse into Droll, so I think that's probably the main reason that K9 players aren't choosing to play it. And I'm about to go into some of the combos, but it is worth mentioning that one of the main differences between a deck like K9 and something like Ryzeal is that Ryzeal just has a greater number of higher quality main deck bodies. Like whether you are, let me just pull up Ryzeal real quick, whether you are summoning Ice, for example, or Sword, or Ext, or even some of the bad ones like Node, which are still extremely good value, they're just not as great starters, you're getting a lot of value off of those one card because they're all going to search you other cards. Whereas you need setup for the Lantern to work properly as you do with Jokul, but if you have enough level 5s in your deck, then the Jokul's probably usually going to be gas. But then you just have to play other cards that are not very good like the Disablaster just to have enough level 5s in your deck. So that's the main reason that I don't think you can really play this on its own. It's probably still going to be a decent deck, but it's not going to be one of the best decks in a room, unless you're just choosing to play it as a package in another deck. Okay, so now let me show you 2 basic combos so you have an idea of how the deck plays. So the first one is a basic combo with Jokul and a blank level 5. So here you have Jokul, and you don't need to normal summon this because you'll have another level 5 in hand, and that means that you can special summon this one and the other level 5 just by revealing them. So you reveal them, you special summon the Jokul and the blank level 5, and then you can use Jokul's effect, where during your main phase you can add a non-aqua canine monster from your deck to your hand, and here you're going to search for the Izuna. Now one thing to keep in mind while you're playing this deck is that Izuna, whether or not you're able to complete whatever combo you're trying to go for, is always a card you want to have in your hand, because this is basically a hand trap. Remember, during the main phase, either player's main phase, if your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, then you can special summon it, dump the Lupus, bring the Lupus out, and then quick rank 5 in your opponent's turn or whatever. So whatever you're doing with this deck, you always want to have access to Izuna. So now we've searched for the Izuna, And we can go into the Ripper. So this is the basic K9 rank 5 you're going to be making. I didn't go over the rank 5s in the extra deck yet because I'm going to show you the basic toolbox stuff in the sequence, and then I'll cover what's basically just the toolbox cards that you do have to play or you don't have to play. So anyhow, Ripper says it's 2 level 5 monsters, so it's generic. You can detach 1 material from this card, add 1 K9 card from your deck to your hand. Then if your opponent activated a monster effect this turn, you can set a K9 quick play spell from your deck or graveyard. So there's always this gimmick about your opponent having activated a monster effect. This card, because it is generic, you can make it in Vanquish Soul with like the Jiaolong and the Holly Sue. So Vanquish Soul technically does bridge into K9 as well. So that's pretty cool about that interaction. So yeah, then this says when your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, quick effect, you can detach 1 material from this card, negate that effect. So notable cards that will activate in the hand or graveyard, well, monster effects, would be stuff like Nibiru or Droll. So a lot of decks will want to try to get this on board so that they can negate stuff like Nibiru or Droll. So being able to do this before you search can be quite strong. If you are forced to search like we just did in the combo that I show you because we have nothing else in hand, then you obviously are not going to be able to negate the Droll because you haven't made the Ripper yet. So anyhow, here we're going to search for our K9, because our case of K9, because we searched the Izuna off of the Jokool, and now we search for the case of K9 off the Ripper, because the case of K9 will give us another search, and that will allow us to get to our Lantern. So even though, like, you know, this one can only add a non-Aqua K9, and this one can only add a K9 spell or trap, because you have all these different searchers, you're usually going to be able to get to everything you want. So now you can use Lantern's effect, which targets specifically a K9 monster, not just a level 5, and special summon himself and then a K9 target from the graveyard. Then you can use the Lantern's effect to search for a K9 spell or trap. So there are 2 K9 liberation cards. I'll get to that in a second, but we're searching for a card so far. And now we can turn those into another rank 5 if we want. I'm not going to show every single possible line you can go for, but here I'm going to make Nash Knight, which is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck. So this card says during the main phase quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card, attach 1 number XYZ monster from your extra deck to this card as material that has a number between 101 and 107 in its name, and then you can attach 1 other face-up monster on the field to this card as material. So now if you were to make this out of turn with the Izuna and the Lupus, then you can non-targeting attach a monster your opponent controls to this as material, so that's a pretty strong type of interaction. But here we're going to immediately use the effect, and we're going to attach the 104 Masquerade as material because of what we're about to do next. And we're going to go into the CXYZ Nash Knight. So this one can also be XYZ summoned using a Nash Knight you control, and it keeps the materials. So this can't be destroyed by card effects, and it says you can detach a material from this card, special summon from your extra deck 1 number XYZ monster that has a number between 101 and 107 in its name, using this face-up card you control as material, but destroy it during your opponent's next end phase. And it transfers the materials. So here we're now going to make the C104, and this one has a couple different effects. So first of all, when it is special summoned, you can target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it. And remember that our case of K9 has a secret effect where, where does it say? If this card in the spell and trap zone is destroyed by card effect, you can set a K9 quick play spell from your deck or graveyard. So we actually would like to use the C104's effect in our own turn to be able to get the extra search off of case of K9, because it's basically 2 searches if you can use both effects in the same turn. But then this has another effect if it has the number 104 as material, which we attached earlier off the Nash Knight. And that is once per turn during either player's turn, when a monster effect is activated on your opponent's side of the field, you can detach an XYZ material from this card, negate the activation, then you can send a random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard, and if you do, have your opponent's life points. So this can be pretty toxic in Vanquish Soul because they have like lots of ways of burning you. And it's just generally like kind of a cringe card, but because it's so powerful, you kind of have to play it. So anyhow, on summon, we're going to pop our own case of K9, and that will set the Force Liberation. So Force Liberation says, during the main phase, target a K9 XYZ monster you control, special summon from your extra deck a K9 XYZ monster with a different name by using that monster you control as material, which is always treated as an XYZ summon, and it keeps the materials. Then you can destroy 1 card your opponent controls. At the end of the battle phase, if your K9 monster battled this turn, you can set this card from your graveyard, but the effects are once per turn. So there is a Force Liberation, and there's also an LC Liberation. So this is almost the same thing, but this is not restricted to your main phase. So this says target a K9 XYZ monster or a rank 5 XYZ monster you control, special summon from your extra deck a K9 XYZ monster with a different name by using that monster you control as material. At the end of the battle phase, if your K9 monster battle this turn, you can set this card from your graveyard. So this card is more flexible than the Forced Liberation in that you don't have to do it during the main phase, and you don't have to target specifically a K9 XYZ. You can also just target a rank 5 XYZ, but the Forced Liberation will give you the option to destroy a card your opponent controls non-targeting. So, you know, this has more ceiling but less flexibility, and then it's the opposite for the LC Liberation. So, yeah. Now, instead of just waiting for the opponent's turn to use the Azuna, which you can do, you could choose to summon the Azuna, and if your opponent has used the monster effect, you also can just bring the Lupus out of graveyard whenever you want. But because this one, the graveyard effect says, during the main phase, if your opponent activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, banish it when it leaves the field. So you can choose if you want to summon the Azuna and dump the Lupus. Generally speaking, if you know that your opponent is going to turn this on very easily, then you can just keep this in your hand as an interaction that's safer in your hand, so it doesn't immediately, you know, lose to some type of removal or whatever, and then your Lupus isn't going to be able to rank 5 summon. So yeah, you have like a pretty solid end board where you have this guy, which when your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, you can attach a material, negate the effect. You still have your C104 for the on-field monster effect negation, random card discard, and having your opponent's life points, and then you have both the LC Liberation and the X Forced Liberation. And one of the things that you will usually go into is the K9X Werewolf. So this is the boss monster of the archetype, which says it is 2 level 9 monsters, but you don't ever make it that way. While this card has material, it can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of materials attached to it. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can detach 1 material from this card, then activate the effect depending on whose turn it is. If it is your turn, you banish a card your opponent controls, non-targeting, and /or 1 card from their graveyard. So you can do both. You don't have to choose one. If it's your opponent's turn, you can look at your opponent's hand and banish 1 card from it face up until the end phase. So hand knowledge is obviously crazy in Yu-Gi-Oh! So the end board for K9 is pretty decent, and it's also pretty layered because you can always have the Azuna in hand, and then you always have access to the Forced Liberation and the Liberation in your back row. Because you always want to have layers when possible, like the Lupus in graveyard and the back row, so you don't lose to just something like a Dark Ruler, and then all of your monsters do nothing. That's why you want extra layers. So yeah, that's one example of how you play the deck. So now the second option is for if your opponent is going to Droll you, because Droll is pretty popular in the TCG and maybe popular in next format as well. So let's say that you want to play around Droll, and here we have Jokul and a blank level 5 in hand. So we're going to Jokul and summon the blank level 5, and here we're going to search for Azuna, which means the opponent is now going to Droll us and we cannot search anymore. So it doesn't really, like, there's no way to make the Ripper and then search for, so this one says, detach a material in this card, add a K9 card from your deck to your hand. So sometimes you'd be summoning the Ripper to go for Case of K9, and then Case of K9 go for Lantern to bring back out the body from grave like I showed you before. But now the Ripper doesn't have the search effect, so it's kind of like a less valuable type of card in terms of card economy. It just would be giving you the negation, which is not bad, but you know, you can do more. So what we're going to do here is we're going to summon the Azuna. Because our opponent has Drolled us in the main phase, we actually can special summon this. We don't have to normal summon this. And then we use the trigger effect to dump the Lupus. So now what's going to happen here is the Lupus, because the opponent has activated a monster effect, we're going to be able to special summon this from our graveyard. And what we want to do is we want to go into the Paradise Smasher so that we can lock our opponent out of a turn. Obviously, this is not fair, and I'm not saying that this is like cool Yu-Gi-Oh! This is just one of the best possible plays you can make. So because we are locked out of rank 5 lights with Jokul, we need to do an additional step here and play Imperial Princess Quinqueri. So this one is 2 level 5s, and you can detach a material from this card, target a level 5 monster in either graveyard, and special summon it to either field. So we're going to use that effect and bring back out a Jokul. So there's no actual like card economy advantage here. The only reason you do this is to unlock yourself out of rank 5 lights. So now at this point you need to make the Paradise Smasher with 3 materials, because it needs 2 materials to activate the effect, and then needs to have 1 more material remaining to be able to modify the dice roll. So this is why when your opponent's activated the Droll from their hand, it means that the Lupus is live, and so when you bring out the Lupus, you have this as 1 body, Jokul as the 2nd body, and Azuna as a 3rd body, and then you go for your Paradise through Droll. So that's the anti-Droll play there. So the last thing that I want to talk about is my thoughts on how this deck may perform in the TCG, and whether you should even consider playing it as its own deck or just play it as a Splashable engine. So the cool thing about this deck is that your toolbox is quite broad in terms of the options you can have for the extra deck. For example, the DDD Marksman King Tell is a generic in terms of its materials. It's 2 level 5 monsters. And the DDD Divisor King Deus Machinex requires that you XYZ summon it. Well, you don't have 2 level 10 feed monsters, but you can also XYZ summon it using a DDD monster you control as material. And then this has a really cool effect where once per chain, so this is not once per turn, it's once per chain, when a monster card your opponent controls activates its effect, quick effect, you can either detach 2 materials from this card or destroy a dark contract you control, and if you do, attach that opponent's card to this card as material. So this is a very cool type of interaction that sucks up the opponent's card, so they don't just get to have the resource engraved or something. You know, so it could be good against like Malice bodies, where they typically would want the stuff engraved so they can continue extending. And the cool thing about making this is if you make the Marksman King Tail with your 2 level 5s, and then this is the material on top, when you overlay this, you're going to have 3 materials. And even though you have to detach 2 to suck up 1, when you suck up 1, you'll have another 2 materials, so you actually can use this twice in 1 turn. And then this is a 3000 body that can then go into Zeus on the Crackback or whatever. So that's a really strong like type of card you can play. The Nash Knight stuff is really, really strong as a package. You also can make the Chronomaly Vin Mana. So this one is 2 level 5s generic. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target a face-up monster on the field and 1 XYZ monster or Chronomaly monster in your graveyard. That monster on the field gains half the attack of that monster in the graveyard until the end of the turn. Then attach that monster from the graveyard to this card's material. But more importantly, the thing you actually are going to be playing this for is once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can attach 2 materials from this card, negate the activation. So basically the point is there are a whole bunch of different cards in here. One of the other ones that you sometimes make is the Canine Hound. And this one requires 2 level 5s. It says it cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects that turn it is special summoned. And then each time your opponent activates a monster effect, this card gains 500 attack when that effect resolves. Once per turn during the standby phase, you can attach a material on this card, target a card on the field, banish it. So because this has its own protection, if you also make it with the Lupus, it means that it can't be targeted either. So it's not like a true Towers, but it is a hard body to out that you can just, you know, sometimes make if you want to stall a little bit, or you just need the body on field because you want to make a Zeus later or whatever. So anyhow, my overall thoughts on this is that there are too many low quality cards in the deck that you have to play, like the Dissa Blaster or even the Trickstar Korobane and the Field Spell, for this to compete with the level of quality of cards in the other strong archetypes. Like all the Yummy main deck monsters are excellent cards. The Dracotail cards are excellent, even though the engine is kind of large. The Vanquish Soul stuff combined with Canine is obviously excellent. So I feel like there's no reason to play this pure if you are trying to play competitively, but I do think the deck is strong enough on its own that you can easily play this as like a solid tier 2 type deck. But where this really shines is either using the triple Izuna 1 Lupus package for making out of turn, like turn 0 type rank 5 plays, or a larger package with the triple Izuna 1 Lupus and maybe even triple Jokul. And then I mostly recommend it if your deck already has level 5s, because the chances are that you'll open this and know that level 5 is pretty high. So I think those are most of the relevant thoughts on this. There are some other cards that I've seen people playing. Star Slayer is pretty common because if you're playing a strong resource game and you have Azunas in your hand, it doesn't really matter as much that you end your own turn by making Star Slayer. Chaos Angel you can make light or dark, especially if you play cards like the Trickstar Korobane and the Dissa Blaster. There are other cards like Durandal that people sometimes play, but you can kind of choose what you want to put in here. I just would recommend that you probably play the Machinex because it's one of the stronger types of interaction. You definitely play the Zeus. You basically have to play this card because this is just cheating wins. And if you can get access to the C104, which is probably very expensive now, then you also probably should be playing this card. If you don't want to play those cards or they're too expensive, then you probably should just play this as a package, although Izuna may be the money card, so, you know, who knows if you could even do that. But even just making a Ripper on its own, this is a super high value card, and it's one of the other reasons why the larger Canine package is more attractive in certain decks, because you can search for a Canine card. So if you're playing a larger package, you could even play a single copy of Case of Canine, so that if you were able to go into the Ripper, you know, you can add a Canine card, which includes this card from your deck to your hand, and then you could search for, you know, a Jokul if you hadn't used Jokul, or a Lantern if you wanted to play Lantern, or your Izuna if you hadn't gotten to Izuna. So yeah, the package is extraordinarily strong. It will probably have a huge amount of value for a long time into the future, and so I think Canine is a solid deck. But mostly just play it as a smaller package too. Okay, so thanks for watching. The link to the Discord is in the description below if you want to join there and talk about whatever meta, non-meta, whatever you want. If you want to subscribe, then feel free to subscribe. If you don't, then don't. Thanks for watching.